Welcome to Trending Upward, and on today's podcast, we're going to look at joy out of Philippians chapter 1, verses 8 through 14. The Apostle Paul writes, "For God is my record, how greatly I long after you all in the bowels of Jesus Christ. In this I pray that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment, that ye may approve things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness which are by Jesus Christ unto the glory and praise of God. But I would ye should understand, brethren, that the things which happened unto me have fallen out rather unto the furtherance of the gospel, so that my bonds in Christ are manifest in all the palace and in all other places. And many of the brethren in the Lord, waxing confident by my bonds, are much more bold to speak the word without fear." As we arrive here in the book of Philippians, the book of Philippians has always been commonly referred to as the joy book, a book on how to have joy. The Apostle Paul, in the beginning of Philippians in chapter 1, is trying to encourage the church. He's trying to encourage them on how they can have joy. It's amazing to me that a man in prison is trying to encourage free men and free women on how to have joy. It sounds opposite, truly. We would think of free men and free women trying to encourage imprisoned men and women. However, we see the opposite. We see where a imprisoned man for his faith is trying to encourage a church on how they can have joy. Now, I do know that first century Christianity was a difficult time to be a believer. It was a difficult time to be a follower of Christ. It was a difficult time to gather as a body, as a local church. Look at verses 12 through 14. Let's listen to it. "But I would ye should understand, brethren, that the things which happened unto me have fallen out rather unto the furtherance of the gospel, so that my bonds in Christ are manifest in all the palace and are in all other places. And many of the brethren in the Lord, waxing confident by my bonds, are much more bold to speak the word without fear." So Paul in verses 12 through 14 is trying to uplift the church by sharing with them the silver lining, so to speak. On this note, I would invite you to always be on the lookout for the silver lining when it comes to the faith. When it comes to Christianity, the silver lining is Jesus. I invite you to look for Jesus in your trials. Look for Jesus in your tribulations. Look for Jesus in your difficult times, and I promise you, you'll find him. And what Paul was doing in verses 12 through 14 was highlighting Jesus and the work of Jesus in his difficult circumstances, and he was going to encourage the church by showing them where Jesus was in his trials, in his tribulations, and in his imprisonment. Paul shows them where Jesus was by two things. We see number one in verse 12. Paul wanted them to understand something. Paul wanted the church to understand that the things that have happened to him, they happened to him for the gospel's sake. But not only the gospel's sake, but the furtherance of the gospel. Paul wanted the church to know that, yes, I've had difficult times. I've had difficult days. I have been in prison for my faith. I am writing to you right now from prison. And yes, this seems like bad things. And yes, it seems like awful things. But to know that God is still getting the glory out of it, to know that God has the upper hand, to know that God has my tribulations for the furtherance of the gospel. Paul knew that for them to know that would encourage them. And then we notice the second thing in verse 14. Boldness begets boldness. Paul wanted them to know that because of his boldness for Christ, his willingness to speak truth, to speak the gospel, and to be in prison for it, because of his testimony of boldness, that others were encouraged to also stand up and be bold. There's something that we can learn from this in our lives with the trials and tribulations that we face. We are reminded that God is doing a work. We're reminded that God is working in our lives. We look to Jesus in our trials and tribulations, and we'll find him there. And we can find him. We can find what he's doing as a result. In every situation, the one who is in control of it all can be seen if we know where to look. Ask God to show you his hand. And when you see his hand, you'll see his working. And I trust today that you've been encouraged and challenged by this podcast today.